I recently stumbled across an inspiration website for web designers called Call to Inspiration that does something slightly different. Instead of showing us full layouts and full designs that we can steal ideas from, adapt them, and make them our own, it instead breaks them down into individual elements. So today I'm going to demonstrate how we can recycle and change, tweak, and rebuild some of these designs using Squarespace. I'd probably say this is an intermediate to advanced tutorial. It's not overly complicated, but there's lots of components, things that we put together that you probably need to know about Squarespace before creating these fully bespoke layouts using the new Fluid engine in Squarespace. So if you're just starting out, I'd strongly recommend checking out our Website Builders YouTube channel, and I'll leave a link in the description. And also, we have a free community over on SKOOL with a K that, again, delves in further to how to get up and running with website builders. And of course, we cover chapters like this where we can explore further for those of you who are up to speed with Squarespace. Anyway, that's enough of an introduction. Today, I've selected 3 testimonial blocks in different levels of complexity, and we're going to recreate these using Squarespace. Let's crack on. Okay, so in this tutorial, I'm going to take a layout like this from calltoinspiration.com. I'd strongly recommend checking it out. And we're going to be mimicking this structure in Squarespace, showing how we can create some more advanced layouts. And I'm going to do this in 2 phases. First of all, I'm going to do this as a standard section within our Squarespace site. And we're not going to be looking at these arrows here. And then secondly, I might try using the list feature in Squarespace to see how close to this effect I can get, where we can then flick through multiple images every time. I've already got a page open here. I'm going to add a new blank section. Sometimes I just like to work with a blank section to start with. And I'm going to put some placeholder Latin text for our quote. I'm not going to mimic the content directly. It's mainly to show you how we can create designs and structures in this tutorial. So I'm going to have a look here. We can see we've got a heading font. This shouldn't be a heading 1 unless it's our main heading for our page. So we're looking at probably heading 2 or 3 for this. And of course, we can edit the site styles in Squarespace to match this font and style. I really like the font. I like the chunky effect. Let's go for a heading 2. So first of all, we can see that our heading style isn't really suitable for this style of testimonial. We'll change that in just a moment. But let's get the structure right first. So let's trim this down to roughly the same length. We're going to put some speech marks around it. And there we go. So first bit is there or thereabouts. What I'm going to do is change the background color. So we see it's on a gray there, or a light gray silvery color. So if I go into edit section, go to colors, and let's go for the light option here. Okay, getting closer to it. Now we're going to add this lozenge image above. So I'm going to go to add a section, then add image. Coincidentally, if you're feeling I'm going a bit too fast, and you're just starting out with website builders, I strongly recommend checking out our website builders channel on YouTube, because we've got loads of beginner tutorials that go through every one of these tools in more detail. Now let's select a stock image. That's close enough. I'm just going to search for customer and see if we can have a photo that does a similar job. I think we'll go for this one here. It's got a single person, and of course the testimonials from one person. One thing I'm not going to be doing is using this cutout effect. However, that is something I could use either Adobe Photoshop or Canva. The background removal tools are great for getting that impact. Now we've got our photo in place, we can see it's not quite looking as we want. So we're going to go to edit, then jump to design, and we're going to get it to fill the frame. We can have a look at shapes to see if there's anything that will do the job for a lozenge. There isn't really, although you can play around with these shapes, of course, to get something that works for you. There are longer ones, so we've got an oval shape. We've got a MasterCard option and various shapes, but we're not going to worry about that. We're going to go to fill the frame, and we're going to put a manual corner radius. If I was to click on this option here, we can put a radius on just one of the corners. However, we want to apply this to all 4. So I click on the default option again, and let's put it to, say, 150, meaning that there's enough of a radius there to make it fully pill-shaped and with that full bevel on each end. Okay, so let's go back to our image design option. Let's apply an overlay on that image. And let's go for that green. So we're going to put a green tint on it. And we're going to apply one more effect. So this won't look exactly like the other examples. As I said, I'd need to use Canva for that. But let's get something close enough. So let's go back to our content. And here we can edit the photo itself. And as we can see, it's still a full color photo. So let's reduce the saturation and bump up the contrast. Maybe even taking down the brightness of that photo as well. It's going to take a moment to save that. The overlay effect in Squarespace on photos is a new feature. It used to be that we had to use plugins for that. Now we have our image and our title in place. And we're going to put in our name. Not very good with names. Not feeling at all creative today, so let's go with that as our name and our business name. We can obviously go to centrally align for our text. So click on that box twice. Let's jump back in and put it centrally aligned, and the same then for the author of this quote. And next up, we can look at the spacing. So I'm going to add a section above simply because we can't see where the divide is because it's filling into that top section. So I'm going to add a blank section above it just so we can see where this section for now starts and finishes. That's looking quite nice. But the pill shape is longer on this one, so let's just match that up a bit more. And our quote is a little bit longer. That's fine because we want it to be able to adjust depending on application. So if you're looking for new inspirational ways of putting quotes in on your pages, this can look really nice, something a bit different. I'll be honest, I prefer the image on this one. I think it just pops a little bit more, but there's only a limit as how much we can do within Squarespace. Once we've got that in place, we now need to jump to mobile view and just check everything's aligning on that. I did say I would change the font as well, didn't I? New feature on mobile, I've only just spotted it now. The elements we can move up or down, and that's quite a nice feature because one of my bugbears with mobile editing in Squarespace has always been that it just takes too long. So now with all of that done, I'm going to press save. I'm going to go to this paintbrush effect and let's change our font styles. And I'm just going to change the font pack, I think. There we are. We'll go for that one. I don't think the quote needs to be quite so long. Another little tweak that we could add to our design to bring it in closer to the brand is actually select the speech marks and change the color for them. Now bear in mind, we may lose them in the backdrop, and as we can see here, they're kind of a little bit lost here on this particular layout. But if we were to go to this section and change it to the darker colors, we go for a really bold alternative approach where we could take this inner part of the text and turn it to white. So loads of options there for how we can take our quote block and style it to our heart's content. We've got blend modes as well. So if we go to darken option, we can bring the colors back in and make it more vibrant. And it really depends on what you want to do with that. Okay, let's quickly see if we can recreate this effect using a list block. Instead of adding a blank block here, we're going to go to Testimonials and see if I can find one which already has a carousel. Or in fact, we might be better off looking for a hero section. Yeah, this one here I think I'll go for. So the one thing I don't think we'll be able to do without a bit of custom code is to change the shape of the image for this section to match that. But let's bring our quote in first. So we're going to edit the content first, go to the content block, and let's just get rid of all the one apart from the first two because we need to see where the arrows work. And we're actually going to put the quote in for the title and then the name and role as the description. I know it's a bit backwards, but that allows us then to have the bolder title. Again, holding shift and pressing enter means that it will drop the title to the next row. So this has come together quite quickly, just showing how this can work. So let's edit this section, or edit content a little bit more, should I say. And let's go to the design option. And we're going to go to inset. I'm going to go back now. I'm going to put an option to show image. So at the moment, we've got the image behind the title, because this is currently set as a banner slideshow. Okay, so just got myself a little confused there, and it's the carousel option that we want. And we want to drop it down to one column. We don't want to show adjacent slides. And we're going to apply infinite scroll, meaning that we've got the arrows to go between them. But at the moment, structurally, this is all over the place. So we're going to go back in and let's start working on the design and layout for this option. So I'm going to go for 16:9 image crop. And what we're going to try and do at the end is add rounded corners at each end. I hope. So let's go to style first. And we're going to move the arrows to the bottom. Put a bit more spacing above the navigation. Go to large text size to make that quote really stand out. And as we can see, the body's been removed from this one, so we're just going to add that back in. Because we changed the design type to carousel, sometimes it just resets all of the formats. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Now let's go into size and spacing. And this is where we can start really working on it to make it nearer to the other design. So we're going to go with medium content width, maybe even small. I think we'll go with small content width. Content placement to the center, that's what we want. Just a small amount of spacing between elements. The space between slides is only applicable if you show more than one on the screen. We can change the position. Again, that's only applicable in certain design layouts. And we can go to inset or full. But as we can see here, there's not really a huge difference between them. So going from this one to this one, or should I say from this to this, you can see that we're getting there slowly. The one thing you note is I can't put any bold text on that. So I'd have to do it either via custom code or actually in the style settings to make the heading default to bold. But let's change this photo now to match the other one. As we can see, we've got our black and white photo that we can add in place. The only thing we don't have here is the option to apply the overlay effects. So we're stuck to that approach. But this in itself is a really nice testimonial slider effect in a monochrome format. And the difference is this one we can skip between them, or this one we can't. I'm going to do a quick search and we can need a shortcut, and we're going to go straight into CSS. And I'm going to go to the property inspector. And let's use this arrow here and try and find the image. This is where I'm going to put a bit of custom code in, hopefully. I'm going to select this option here. Normally I would take a little bit longer and find the section that I really want to edit. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'll just see if this works. So I'm going to tag it to the image. There we go. So that was a hack. I would certainly look at finding a better class there to assign it to, because usually when you put the important tag in, that means that you're cheating and cutting corners in a lot of instances. So obviously we're going to try and do that. I want to recreate this effect, certainly for our SquareForge. If you head over to squareforge.net, you'll know what I mean. It's an online template builder that we're using to create loads of prefabricated layouts like this that you can just plug and play into your next Squarespace website. Let's just jump in here once more And I'm not quite happy with the ratio of that image. It's quite big and bulky compared to the quote below it. So let's see what options we've got here. I think we can go to an ultra widescreen format. It's more of a pill shaped. And instead of going for the media width as small, we can manually reduce that image size to something that we want. There we go. I could go in and put some custom code in to restyle these arrows to make them more akin to that format. But hopefully that's given you a good idea of how we can either create a single testimonial, which is the easier beginner to intermediate option, should I say, or the slightly more advanced option where we can use a list option. And it means then we can jump between multiple images. Bear in mind that we'd have better content and photos for that. This one's more limited in terms of how we style individual elements, because this is coming in as a heading style as opposed to a text block. We can't go in and change the colors of the inverted commas. We can't make the text bold via custom code or directly through the styling options. This time we're going to change it up to this design. So we've got logo top left-hand corner. We've got our text block, and then we've got our profile in the bottom left-hand corner. For simplicity, I'm going to keep the same image as we've got on this one here, and they'll keep the same content as well. We've already got this section built, so I'm going to duplicate it, and we're going to start changing the format. So first of all, I'm going to take this image. So now it's no longer going to be a rectangle with rounded corners like a pill shape, and instead we're going to go for a circle. So if I go to 1:1 ratio, we can choose the circular image frame option. So that's working well there. Again, that previous tutorial where I created these testimonials shows you how to create different lighting effects, but I still recommend using something like Canva or Photoshop to get the best effects you can. Just going to reduce this in size and then change the height of the frame. And as you can see, this is starting to take shape. Now I can choose this text block. I'm going to hold down Command and A here on a Mac and align that to the left-hand side. If I want this to align to this profile picture, I can change the alignment from top to center. And now we can see that's starting to look better. And we can take this quote and align it to the left. If we just look at our example here, yeah, that's starting to work nicely. I'm not going to worry about tying in the colors because ultimately this will be based on your own brand guidelines. What I will do though is change this section here so we don't confuse the two. So that one's on the gray background, this one on the black. This handle here will adjust the height of the panel, meaning we've got no extra grid blocks at the bottom. And we can go into edit section if we want to give it a little bit more breathing space. It's pretty good here at the moment, set to medium by default, although we can drop it to small, medium, or large. The large one is probably a little bit too much space, so I'm going to go back to medium, or alternatively, I can set it manually. And I like rounded numbers, so let's go to 60. Top and bottom. Nice and compact, but loads of breathing space there, loads of white space, so it just fits nicely. With that in place, let's increase the gaps between each of the rows. So I'm going to have that below it, but I might want to just give a bit more breathing space above it, but not quite as spacious as it was. I'm also going to, oh, I don't want that actually. So I'm going to add a logo in this section here. See if I can find a logo here. So we're going to cheat a little bit. Instead of having a logo, we're going to use a photo of a logo. And then we'll put that in a circular frame. Okay, so we've got that image in place. If we go to the settings again, let's put that into a circular frame. And we're going to deliberately make this smaller than the one below, because the focus really is on the profile picture here. And let's align this to the left-hand side. So we've got that straightforward alignment all the way through. I'm deliberately making it more compact now because it will hopefully make sense in a moment when I change it up. And I'm going to duplicate this. No, I'm not. Scratch that. Okay, nice and compact. I'm going to change this alignment of this text here to align to the middle. So we've got equal spacing above and below, because that was something that was missing there, but it's still looking too compact there. So let's go back into edit section. And this time we're going to focus on this gap or grid option here. So we can remove them completely, and that will allow us to double check that that's all fitting nice and compact. And if we click on these three dots, we can now manually choose the gaps in between the blocks. And the beauty of this is that this only works within this section, meaning it's completely independent of the other areas. So it means now that we can make sure that we've got the right breathing space to make our designs nice and spacious and really pop. Likewise, we can see that this is touching here, so we need to do the same horizontally. Notice how it's now reducing the size of the image. But there we go. So this would probably look better with an actual flat logo as opposed to an image, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how we can take this design and adapt it to this really quickly to match up with this. One thing we couldn't do straight out of the box here is that vertical pipe. That's crazily still not an option in Squarespace at the moment. I really wish they would add in vertical lines, because we can do it with everything else. The one thing I haven't tried actually is whether we can do it with shapes. I don't believe we can apply a line. So the stroke option is new. If we change the fill color and remove that, just experimenting here, is there a way around it? No. We can change the thickness of the line, but we can't make it apply to an individual area. But whilst I've created that, let's use it, and I'll show you an alternative option. So if we duplicate this section, and let's move it down below the section so we're not getting confused between the different designs. I'm going to delete it on this one because I'm quite happy with that at the moment. And with this one here, let's do something slightly different and put this quote in the middle of a box. So I'm going to bring it in one, bring it down one, so it starts in there, and then we're going to use the space then around it to frame that. And we can bring this image to the front and see if we can add kind of like an overlap effect, essentially. Yeah, I'm not sure if I like it. But this, again, you're probably fed up with me saying it, but this is why I like Fluid Engine and Squarespace. It allows us to really play around with it. So that could work quite nicely if I can get that working there. So the logo sits over top of the top left-hand corner. It's not quite sitting there perfectly at the moment, but with a bit of fiddling and adjusting of the gutter spacing between each of the areas, we could probably get that to work. So it just shows how we can do more, take it another step. Yeah, that could work. Not so keen on this lack of space there between those sections, but that, again, is another design that we can add to our layout. Now, one question you may have at this stage is, how is this going to look on mobile? And the answer is, we can decide. I can reduce the size of this image, and if I was to do it properly, I'd have been better off editing the other one first before duplicating the design, so that I'm going to have to go and edit that one as well for mobile. But just bring that box down, make this smaller. It can be a little bit fiddly sometimes. I'm on a touchpad on a MacBook. Okay, that's looking okay there. If I can't access the text now, It's just a case of I need to move that line to the back. And one option I've got is I can adjust it to that line option. And instead of aligning it from the top, I can align it to the center. The only thing is, I think that will affect the desktop view as well. So we need to go and double check that. Most effects will not impact desktop view, but there are some, like, for example, the alignment of content in blocks. They used to. I don't know if they do currently. Let's have a look. So that's centrally aligned. No, it doesn't seem to affect it. So that's good. So if I go back to mobile now and adjust the height of this block, then put this to centrally aligned, we can finish the look of that design. And if we just go and tidy this one up as well while we're at it. Sometimes it'll add extra space at the bottom of the content blocks, which is a case of removing that. And yeah, we're nearly there. If you're getting a little bit lost with this and you want some tutorials that cover the basics, I'd strongly recommend checking out our website builders channel on YouTube, because that's exactly what we do. We cover every single element or block that we can add into our sections. I also have tutorials explaining how sections differ from blocks and how they differ from pages. It's a work in progress, but currently we're nearly 100 videos on that channel for both Squarespace and Hostinger. We're going to be adding Wix in the autumn of 2024. And we want to build this up to a library of 300 tutorials like this ready at your fingertips. Okay, for this tutorial, we're going to do something that's a little bit more complicated. So this one is definitely on the slightly more advanced stage, mainly because we're going to be bringing in 3 or 4 different applications to get this effect across. And we're going to look at this testimonial here. We can see we've got a rating here, which we can put in the heading. This could be a heading 3 or 4, maybe even paragraph 1. And we've got the carousel option, which I don't think I'll be able to replicate in this particular example. I could probably create a plugin for it for one of the list sections in Squarespace, but I think it's just going to be too much too soon for that. We could put a background image in for that section and then have this chap here to the left of that background image, and that's a workaround. But instead, I'm going to show you how this could be without these carousel options here. And it's just a one-off testimonial in a card with a nice rounded corners option. And we're going to try and taper off this right-hand corner. First of all, we need to recreate this image style. So we're not going to use the same chap as here, but I have already been into Canva and pre-selected a headshot that I'm hoping we can remove the background image. And just realizing now that's probably not the best image to choose, simply because she's wearing a black jacket and we're going to be cropping it onto a black background. So instantly I'm going to change it up. So all of the prep I did beforehand, it wasn't a huge amount, is going to have to be changed now. I'm just bringing this lady in instead, and we're going to center her within that photo. We're going to try and get her as large in that frame as possible, because it gives us more flexibility to work with then to get it to fit right. That's a bit too much, as we can see. We don't want any clipping off on the edge, so we want to keep her hairline in that photo. And we're going to go to Edit Image and Background Remover. We can see the little crown icon here. This is a pro version feature, so you need to pay, I think it's around $110, something like that per year. Canva's incredibly great value for money, and it's something that we use pretty much every day. In fact, all of my thumbnails for YouTube are assembled on Canva. Even though I've been using Photoshop for 30 years, I find it's much quicker in Canva. I've got 2 options here. I could either save this as a transparent PNG where we've got slightly longer loading time. That could work. Or I could change the background color, mainly because this example is on a solid background color here. So we could match that background color, obviously, and in our design is a black background. And I think that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to drag this to the bottom right-hand corner, and we've got the black background here. And we can see here now that the photo doesn't really resemble or match the background. So we can go into Edit Image, go to the Adjustments, and then take the shadows down. And that's a really easy way of getting our photo to fit with the background. The black tones then we can, again, bring in so that they match it. And then we can tweak this by eye. We could also increase the vibrance slightly as well, so it's a slightly more colorful photo. Something I do often with YouTube thumbnails, for example, is just increase the sharpness or clarity a tiny bit. It depends on what finish you're going for. Part of the reason I do that is because there's so many AI photos now that have that sheen to them, that they don't have the grain that you would have in a real photograph. And so that's one way around that as well. But I think we'll go with that as our headshot. And I think we'll go for, yeah, we'll stick with that. Now we've got our photo in place. If we go back to the original example, we can see that there's something else here as well. And this is a gradient to the bottom of this photo. So that's why I couldn't just go and find a headshot with a black background for that reason. So let's have a look at the size of the gradient per the photo. Okay, so this looks a little bit cramped. That's because we're not going to be using this photo to fill that entire panel. We're going to have just the solid background color around the rest of it. So she'll fit in there a bit better. So I'm going to search for pre-made gradients on Canva. So just look for a black gradient, and we're looking for a transparent gradient. I know they're here because I've used them before, and that's probably why I'm not finding it, because I'm looking for photos, not graphics. That would help, Elwyn. So if I drop that one in, I can enlarge that gradient to roughly the size that I want. There we go. So I don't want it to be too small at the bottom so it's barely noticeable, but I also don't want it to cover the photo too much either. Now we've got that, so let's share, download this, pick a better naming convention than me. The reason actually we can't go with a transparent background on this because this is a black gradient as opposed to a transparent gradient, or like an eraser effect that we could do in Photoshop to blend it in. Because I've cheated and used that black gradient, we're going to have to save this as a solid image. And I'm thinking JPEG is probably the best because it's predominantly photo, even though it's got a solid background. But you could try a JPEG versus PNG, see which one loads better, which one has the better quality. If we go for, say, 75, we want it relatively quick loading. And I really should have named the design as well. That's very naughty of me. Okay, so now we've got that in place. Let's start building this in Squarespace. So again, I'm going to cheat like I did in the last couple of tutorials I've done on this topic. We're going to use the content that's already in place. It's been a couple of hours since I've been on here, so I just need to give it a full refresh. Look at these sections. I think we're going to use this one, and we'll duplicate that. I'm going to move it down just so we've got the difference in between each of the sections. And I'll put this on a gray background just so we can separate the different designs. Okay. So let's start putting this together. So this is heading 2. Let's try heading 3 or 4. That's looking good there. Let's get our profile down in that section there as well. You can see it's already starting to come together. Don't think we need that secondary logo. No, we're going to remove that. I'm also not going to worry about the star rating. I could put that in by saving a PNG with 5 stars, and that would work well for that. But again, just to save a bit of time, because it's not really the main focus of this example. Now I'm going to add my image, and I'm going to want this right at the bottom. So I'm going to need to go into Edit section. And here, we're going to remove the fill screen option. That allows us to snap the image to the very bottom of the container. And that's how we can get the gradient coming in off the bottom of it. And we can bring it down to give ourselves a bit more breathing space for this section. And likewise, we'll bring these sections down as well. Okay, so let's upload our photo. Select it from the computer. If it's not fitting to the frame edge to edge, that's absolutely fine. We don't want that in this particular example because we don't want it to cut off either side. So I could probably do a bit more tweaking just to get the lighting to feel more natural within that frame. But even that, as a quick photo we've taken off Canva and dropped into place, we can see that it's really starting to take shape already. Okay, so we've got the text overlapping the image, and that's quite a nice effect. So we'll keep that in as well. I'm just putting some placeholder text in place. So let's go from paragraph 2 to heading 2. Heading 1. With this particular font, the numbers are coming out really skinny, so I'm not sure why that's happening. And let's go for slightly bigger font for this. So we'll try paragraph 1 for this text here. The only downside to having them as one text block instead of two is we don't have any direct control over the spacing between the elements. So if we wanted that, we could duplicate this block and then just delete the heading 1. If I press backspace, it's almost certainly going to put it as a heading 1, but I actually quite like that. Anyway, another option we've got is to use the fit to frame option, and then we've got a tighter control over shorter blocks of text. It works really well. And I think that's what we're going to do. Same for this, because we shouldn't really be using a heading 1 for this type of section, because for accessibility and for Google, it needs to index the page properly and needs to know kind of where the main heading for the page is. And this isn't a main heading for a page. It's just a text effect that we're after. So by putting the fit to frame and choosing a different heading, like a smaller heading, that's helped with that. And now there's still a big space, but we can use the block alignment option to make them fit closer together. Let's pick these blocks here and just bring them up to make them more compact again. Sometimes when we're changing things around, it'll affect other frames because Squarespace thinks that that's what we want to do. So you can see the frame here is increased, and we don't want that. And it's just now a case of playing around with it. Of course, we're kind of borrowing, stealing the idea. We're not trying to do a direct copy of that other testimonial. Just kind of showing you how the effect can look. But already this is a really nice, clean, bespoke layout. Even if we were to do nothing else here, this would work quite nicely. But let's do something else. I'm going to add in another shape block. And let's bring this larger. So that green block might be a little bit strong. So what we can go is into the pencil option here, settings, and let's change this color. And let's just try with the gray block here. Now we're going to select this block and we can move it to the back. Just keeping pressing this button so it goes behind the text blocks. And it's finally just a case of tweaking with it a little bit until we get to a point where we're happy. So we want some nice breathing space around our quote and our shape. So let's just show you how we can tweak this shape even further. So we can put in a border radius. Let's try 40 for that. Okay, that's a bit more than I wanted. Try 30. Okay, that's taken shape. I think I prefer the slightly less rounded edges. So we're going to settle with 20. There we go. Okay, I've made my decision there. Save that. And it's interesting, leave a comment. Did you think that you could create a layout as bespoke as this using Squarespace? If you come back to Squarespace after a few years, this is something we definitely wouldn't have been able to do neatly in Squarespace 7.0, but 7.1 and Fluid Engine allows so much more fluidity or structural freedom with our designs. So I'm jumping across to another CSS clip path maker, or Clippy, which is a tool that I've used on and off for years. And this allows us to create custom polygons. So I'm hoping I'll be able to identify that block and be able to apply custom shape to it. So this is what I'm going to do now, is just take the edge off the top right hand corner. I'm going to do it by eye. But it's just a little bit quicker than remembering what CSS is to change that. And as we can see here now, we've got the CSS code ready to copy and paste in. So it's just one line of code, and then we can go back to Squarespace. And this is one of the features that makes this a more intermediate to advanced tutorial. If you're up to speed with CSS, you'll find this a breeze. If not, then just follow these steps. So I'm going to press / and then I'm going to type CSS, and that will bring us to the custom CSS window. I'm going to put this in. So we need the curly brackets to put the code within. So basically it's identifying this class, which you can see I've just put a placeholder in here for now, and then applying that clip path to take the top edge off. I don't know how it's going to work with the rounded corners. It should work okay, but this is the first time I've tried it, so we'll see how it goes. This might be an epic fail, and we will just pretend it didn't happen. But now I need to go back to preview mode, and I'm going to use this Chrome extension, which is a block identifier. And this is what we need to identify the div ID, this block here. And we want to apply the code just to that. This is a free Chrome extension, Find Squarespace IDs. So if you do Squarespace block identifier, Find Squarespace IDs, search like that in the Google Chrome extension store, then you should be able to download that for free. The reason I like this one is it shows the blocks, but it also shows the section IDs as well. So we can narrow it down to an individual section if we want as well. But instead of it being a div class, it's going to be a div ID. Difference is we've got a hashtag here for the ID, and we only have one of those unique per page, whilst a class could be a repeating element used multiple times throughout the page and website. Okay, so that's we can see 99 there. That's not enough. And then let's say let's go in at 80% across and then 22% down. So we want that number to kind of match up. So if it's 80, that should be 20 accordingly. So that's perfectly squared off the edge or cornered off the edge. But let's go to say 90 and 10. See how that looks. In fact, I think we're going to go 88 and 12 and we'll settle for that. But once you've got the code in place, you can just tweak with this until it's got to the stage that you want. The only thing is we've lost the rounded corners. I need to do a little bit of digging to find out how to put them back in. But if you wanted to straight edges throughout, of course, we could remove the rounded corners off via Squarespace and we just have that notch cut out of the top right-hand corner. But that's how you achieve that particular outcome. As I said, slightly more advanced tutorial this time, but it's a really nice effect. Of course, what I'd need to do next is go into mobile and edit this to get it to fit. And essentially, it's just moving things around. So in the other tutorials that we covered, we certainly went through this approach. So I'm not going to potentially bore you with going through that now because it's so repetitive. If you check out a load of my other tutorials, there's loads that cover how to adapt this to mobile view. Yeah. I'd love to hear what you've got to say about some more advanced effects. Is there an easier way of doing this than what I have done? Like, for example, we can see here on mobile now that this corner has changed. So we probably need to put a media query in to fix that. Or instead of percentages, I could do it pixel. Again, this is not really a CSS tutorial. It's just to show you how we can create these effects. I will definitely be creating some more tutorials on covering things like media queries and how we can adapt our design to work slightly different on desktop than we can on mobile. And one final point, we have 2 communities over on SKOOL, a platform that I'm really excited about because I've started working with it lately and it adds that element of community to our tutorials. So if you want to be able to join a community for free that you can talk and get some help when you're building your websites on Website Builders, I'd strongly recommend heading over and checking out our Website Builders community. If you're looking to take it to the next step and you want to turbocharge your career in web design using Website Builders, then we have a dedicated private community for that as well. All the information is in the description and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.